right, so we're going to be looking at some early computational methods. So in other words, how people used to do some of these computations. And specifically, we're going to be looking at multiplication here. Now, certainly nowadays, when we go to multiply something like 39 times 57, we know how to line them up. I'm sure you learned in grade school. 39 times 57, you start with 7 times 39 and then 5 times 39 and you add them up, okay? Or, as I'm sure most of us do, we would just type in 39 times 57 on our calculator, okay? But let's see how they used to do it back in the dark ages before calculators, okay? So the first thing we're going to look at is what's called multiply using duplication and mediation, okay? All right, so what we start with is we're trying to multiply these two numbers together. Okay, so I'm going to write the 39 and 57 right next to each other. Okay? All right, and if you want, you can put a little dash in between so you keep them separate. Okay? All right, now what you want to do is, with the number on the left, I want to divide this number on the left by 2 and drop your remainder. Okay, so if you divide 39 in half, you get 19. Okay, and notice I'm dropping my remainder of 1. Okay, and what I'm going to do over here on the right is I'm going to multiply by 2. Well, 57 times 2 is 114. Okay, and you're like, oh my God, where are we going with this? Well, you'll see. All right, do it again. Divide this side by 2 and drop your remainder. So 19 divided by 2 would be 9.5, so 9. And 114 times 2 is 228. Okay? All right, now you're thinking, well, when do I stop this dividing by 2 and multiplying by 2? I'm going to stop when this column here, when I'm dividing by 2, becomes a 1. Okay? All right, so 9 divided by 2 is 4.5, but remember I'm dropping my remainder, so it's 4. 228 times 2 is 456. All right, do it again. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 456 times 2 is 912. Okay, do it again. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Ooh, we got to the 1. So this is our last step. And 912 times 2 is 1,824. All right. So far, so good? All right, so all we're going to do is we're going to start with your two numbers. Take the number on the left and keep dividing by 2 until you get to 1. And also at each stage, take the number on the right and multiply it by 2. Now, here comes the fun part. Look at your rows here. If this row has an even number on the left, so for example, this row right here has an even number on the left, right? Because it starts with 2. Throw it out. Cross them out. This has an even number on this side. Cross it out. So I'm only looking for even numbers over on this column. Throw out that row. Okay? All right. Now, take the numbers on the right. So this column of numbers, we have a 57, a 114, a 228, and an 1824. So that's what's left over here once we cross out our rows. Add them up. And we get 2,223. Hey, guess what? 39 times 57, if you were to have done it the long way or using your calculator, is 2,223. Okay? So this is just another way of multiplying. And you're probably sitting there going, now wait a minute. It was quicker on my calculator. Well, remember, this was back in the dark ages, like, you know, when I was little, when you didn't have calculators to do quick calculations. And if you're dividing by 2, that's pretty easy to do in your head. And multiplying by 2 is also pretty easy. And then all you're doing is adding up. So if you're doing things by hand, this is a quick way of multiplying. Of course, you know, our tried and true method, which is, you know, what we learned in grade school also works. But this is just another way of doing things. And you get the same answer. Well, you should if you did it right. Okay, the next way we're going to see how to multiply something is what's called lattice multiplication. Okay, and what we want to do here is we want to multiply 47 times 259. Now, certainly I can just plug in 47 times 259 in my calculator and get 12,173, but I want to demonstrate how to use lattice multiplication. All right, so in lattice multiplication, you have to create a lattice. Okay, so 47. Okay, and notice I wrote it with a little space in between because I'm going to make them as columns. And I'm multiplying by 259, which I'm going to write vertically over here. And I'm going to create what is called a lattice. Okay, so it's kind of you start by making a table. Bear with me while I draw it. Okay, and each one of these cells I'm going to divide diagonally. Okay, so I've created my lattice. And now I have to fill in my lattice. Okay, all right, so this is the cell that corresponds to the 4 and the 2. And what I'm going to do is to fill this cell, I'm going to multiply 4 times 2, and 4 times 2 is 8. Now notice that this cell is broken up into 2 parts. Okay, so if I want to write 8, I need to write it as 0, 8. Okay? This box right here corresponds to 7 times 2. 7 times 2 is 14. Since it's a 2-digit number, there we go, 14. This box corresponds to 4 times 5, which is 20. This box right here corresponds to 7 times 5, which is 35. Okay, and can you see how to fill in the other boxes? All right, we have 4 times 9, which is 36. And we have 7 times 9, which is 63. Okay, so notice that in this lattice multiplication to start with, we have small multiplications, easy ones that you can easily do in your head. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to look at diagonals. Okay, so for example, we're going to look at it like this. Okay, so notice I just drew my diagonals. Alright, so now we're going to have these diagonals straight across. And what we're going to do is we're going to add up our diagonals. But when you add up your diagonals, start here. Okay, so start at your diagonal on the lower right. Okay, so if you add what's in the diagonal here, we have a 3. Okay. Now, our next diagonal crosses the numbers 6, 6, and 5. Well, 6 and 6 is 12, and 5 is 17, right? So, 17, carry the 1, right? Okay. 3, 3, 4, and 1. 3 and 3 is 6. 4 is 10. 1 is 11. Carry a 1. 2, 8, 1, and 1 is 12. Carry a 1. 1 and 0 is 1. And now you just read your number. 1, 2, 1, 7, 3. 47 times 259 is 12,173. Okay, to multiply using Napier's rods, we're going to use this table here. And what this is it has a lattice kind of pre-done for you. Okay, so if we want to multiply 4 times 54, okay, so I'm going to start with 4 times 54, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over my part of the lattice that corresponds to these digits here. So the first block I need to bring over is the block from 4 and 5. So here's 4 times 5, 20. Okay? So just like what we did with lattice multiplication, 4 times 5 is 20. And now the block 4 times 4, which we know is 16. Okay? So I really don't need this multiplication table here, hopefully. Okay? And now we're going to do the same thing we did in the lattice multiplication. Okay? We're going to add our diagonals. Okay? And remember, you start from the lower right. The only thing on this diagonal is a 6. This diagonal here contains a 1 and a 0. 1 plus 0 is 1. And this diagonal has a 2. Notice I didn't have to carry anything. So 4 times 54 is 216. And that's how you multiply using Napier's rods.